Hey everyone, it is late at night and I am Norman. Ah, yes, ads that disguise themselves as social media posts just enough to trick some of us into liking them. Watch ads are especially bad because 99% of the watches are just terrible. The other 1% is Baltic. I just saw a Baltic ad come through on Instagram. Recently, I've been seeing some very interesting watches come through as ads. Most of them are Bauhaus style, but some of them are pretty intriguing. So I've gone through and clicked on a whole bunch of watch ads so you don't have to, and tonight we're going to do virtual reviews of them. See which ones are good and which ones are just kind of garbage. So let us begin. Be sure to stick around until the end of this video where I'll share with you one of these ad watches that almost was brilliant. The first ad that I clicked was one for About Vintage, and this is one of the few brands on my list tonight that exists outside of social media ads. You'll encounter them in places other than just scrolling through your Instagram feed. They actually have a very intriguing lineup which includes some great minimalistic mill-sub style watches. In fact, if I didn't already own the Serica 5303, and if I wore dive watches more often, I would be really tempted to pick up one of these mill-sub watches. The pieces that I'm looking at are the 1926 At Sea watches. They feature a nicely slim dive bezel, dot indices, and sword hands. The dial is spacious, the markers don't look cramped at all, and the text on the dial isn't terribly overwhelming. You can choose from a number of straps or bracelets for these when you're ordering them. You can get them with a bracelet or a Milanese strap, or a variety of leather or rubber straps. They come in at just under 40 millimeters, at 39.5 millimeters to be exact. This is a perfectly respectable size for a dive watch. They are a bit thick at 12 millimeters, but I've definitely seen thicker. Tudor Pelagos. They have what appear to be sandwich dial triangles at the 12 and 6, and they are no-date watches. They retail for $375, and they have 200 meters of water resistance. This brand also produces some really great-looking chronograph watches. The 1815 chronograph is the lineup I'm looking at. They feature small Arabic markers really close to the edge of the dial, calling out the hours. These watches feature a minute sub-dial at 6 o'clock, which tracks the seconds. The hands are classy and definitely more dress than sports. The pushers are great looking. In general, the aesthetics of these watches is amazing. They are large at 41 millimeters, but just look so good. These pieces retail for $335, and they have Miyota movements in them. As for the specifications on the dive watch that I'm looking at, the case size is 39.5 millimeters. The case material is 316L stainless steel. The case height is 12 millimeters. The lug width is 20 millimeters. The water resistance is 200 meters. The crystal is a domed sapphire crystal. The movement is TMI VH31, which is a sweeping seconds quartz movement. And those are actually pretty amazing. The Watches of Remembrance watch that I own has one of those, and it totally sweeps like a mechanical movement. The next ad I clicked was for Undone. And this is another brand that you might encounter outside of ads. Certainly you'll see them here and there. Undone has a wide variety of watches in their online store. The piece I personally like is the Vintage Killy. These are very seagull looking pieces. They feature a cream-colored dial with a fun Art Nouveau font for the Arabic indices at the hours. The sub-dials are at 12 and 6. They have onion-style crowns that just look amazing. I love the style of their pushers. They have two different marker tracks around the edge of the dial. A telemeter track and another that displays 60 at the 12, but increases counterclockwise, ending with a marker with 1000 as its value. They have blued leaf hands. These are no-date watches with domed, slightly boxed crystals. They retail for $289. This is really the only piece I see on their site that's interesting to me personally. Their other pieces just kind of look like generic sporty watches, kind of Joma Shop style. As for the specifications on the watch that I'm looking at by Undone, the case size is 40 millimeters, the case material is 316L stainless steel, the case height is 12.7 millimeters, the water resistance is 30 meters, the crystal on this is mineral. The movement inside this is a TMI mecha quartz movement. Sad about the mineral though. The next ad I clicked was for Borealis, in particular the Borealis Sintra, which is sort of an explorer style watch with shark's tooth indices on it. They have an Omega style minutes hand and a spear style hours hand. The red dial looks great, however it is interrupted by a date window at the 6 o'clock. This is a black on white indicator. The date window is everything I personally don't like about date complications. It looks like an afterthought. The case has both brushed and polished surfaces on it, but at 41.5 millimeters, it is just too large. Given its almost explorer style aesthetic, I feel like a 36 millimeter case with 20 millimeter lug width would look much more brilliant. This brand also produces great looking dive and field/pilot watches. The pilot's watch comes in at 38 millimeters, which is pretty good for this aesthetic. It has a triangle at the 12 o'clock and field-style Arabic indices for the other hour markers. The water resistance on the Sintra is 200 meters. These retail for about $249. As for the Sintra's specifications, the case size is 41.5 millimeters. The material is 316L stainless steel. The case height is 12.95 millimeters. The water resistance is 200 meters. The crystal is sapphire, and the movement inside is a Miyota 9015 automatic. So these watches are definitely a step above your typical ad watch. The next ad I clicked was Royal London. And the piece that I'm looking at is the Royal SE10. This is a chronograph style watch. I say that because while it does have 3 subdials and appears to be a chronograph, those subdials actually perform different functions from those of a chronograph watch. At the 9 o'clock position is the days of the week subdial, at the 3 o'clock position is the date of the month subdial, and at the 6 o'clock position is a 24-hour indicator. I actually like this layout. These subdials, in my opinion, are more functional than a chronograph. There may be those of you out there who actually use your chronographs for stuff like baking or something, but I've actually rarely had use for a chronograph or a timing bezel. But that might just be me. However, I think a disguised day date indicator is actually pretty cool. They could actually do both, however. A 24-hour indicator is fairly useless. That subdial could have been a chronograph subdial. Then you just have to add a couple pushers, because frankly, pushers look really cool. And the 6 o'clock could count fractions of a second up to a minute, then start counting minutes up to 60. Just an idea. Although I'm not sure if there's a movement out there that could accommodate this. These are great looking watches though. They feature arrow-shaped applied hour markers, a minutes track around the edge of the dial with minutes and seconds called out in small Arabic numerals. The hour and minute hands are both brilliant looking leaf hands. The seconds hand is a tapered stick hand, and it is blued. I love the royal logo. That crown is so great looking. The sleek case shape and elegant looking lugs are just great. It looks like the case and lugs are brushed, but the bezel is polished, as far as I can tell from the photos. These watches retail for about $180. Royal's SW2 is an actual chronograph. It has what appears to be a 30-minute subdial at the 9 o'clock, a 24-hour subdial at the 3 o'clock, and what might be either a second subdial or a chronograph, tracking fractions of a second dial. The pushers on this watch look great, but why? Look at that horrible date window. It's just stuffed in there between the 4 and 5 o'clock markers. I don't understand. Do we really need to know what the date is? We have phones and calendars and computers. Do we really need to ruin a perfectly beautiful dial with a date window? As for the specifications on the SE10, the case size is 41 millimeters. The material is stainless steel. The case height is 13 millimeters. The water resistance is 50 meters. The crystal, I believe, is mineral. It's not listed. And the movement surely is quartz, although that also isn't listed. The next ad that I clicked on is Harold Pinchbeck. And this ad was for something a little bit different. This is a mid-tier watch retailing at about $4,000. What a brilliant looking dress watch. These watches are truly beautiful. I absolutely love the dial design, the little Roman numerals around the smooth track, with just the tiniest of dots to indicate the minutes divisions between them. Amazing guilloche pattern throughout the center portion of the dial. Blue Dauphine hands, an oversized sub-seconds dial, the massive onion crown, the elegant logo at the 6 o'clock, the case shape. This is nearly a perfect, classy, mega dressy watch, but they are beasts at 42 millimeters. Other than its size, I just can't get over how good these watches look. If they weren't so huge, they would be a real temptation, even at their $4,000 price tag. I think in the future I may have to dig a little deeper into this brand. Their designs are just brilliant. However, nearly all of their pieces are 42 millimeters. Why? They're dressy pieces, but they're sized like they're sports pieces. I'm a little confused. But if you have some money and you're looking for a contemporary sized dress watch, you may have to check this brand out. As for the specifications on this watch, the case size is 42 millimeters, the material is 316L stainless steel, the case height is 9.95 millimeters, the water resistance is 50 meters, the crystal is sapphire, and the movement inside this watch is an ETA Unitas 6498 hand-wound movement. Next, I clicked on an ad for watches that I'm actually pondering getting at some point in the future. These are the 24-hour watches. These style of watches always intrigue me. I think it would be cool to tell time on a 24-hour dial, even though it may not be as accurate. The dials are nice and clean, with a railroad-style minutes track around their outer edge. Inside of that track are Arabic numerals. They are small and smart-looking. And inside of those indices are small dots. The dial text is minimal and the hands are pencil hands. The minutes hand is a gold color, while the hour hand is silver. The hands are nearly the same size, so this color difference is helpful. The case is simple and minimal and measures in at 40 millimeters. Sadly, the crystals are mineral. I do like the overall aesthetic of these watches, and they retail for about $200. As for the specifications on these watches, the case size is 40 millimeters, the material is stainless steel, the case height is 10.4 millimeters, they have 50 meters of water resistance, the crystal is mineral, and the movement inside them is a Ronda 515.24 quartz. And the last ad that I clicked is for a watch that I think could have been a brilliant piece, but they kind of missed the mark. This brand is Tapferkeit. Tapferkeit? This brand's watches are a great example of the really intriguing looking Bauhaus watches that I've been seeing coming through. I've actually clicked on their ads a few times because I kind of forgot the issues that I had with these watches. The specific watch that I clicked on was the Lowenherz Black. These watches are all dial. The handset is a break from what you typically see in Bauhaus watches. The Bauhaus pieces that I've personally seen have either stick hands or pencil hands. The Antia and the Nomos Orion are a couple examples of Bauhaus watches that I have that have stick hands, while the Max Bill has more pencil style hands. But the hands on these watches are far more dressy. They're actually narrow spear hands. I really love the dial on these watches, except for the fact that they ruined it with the date window. For example, the black dial watch has a black on white date window in it. Why? Why couldn't you at least go with white on black? It features long, hairline-thin batten hour markers. These do not carry out to the edge of the dial. Instead, they terminate a bit inside with 5-minute/second intervals called out in small numbers at the outside of the markers. All of the even markers are a bit shorter because on the inside of the even markers are called out in slightly larger Arabic numbers. Between these markers and set in a bit is a minutes track. This consists of alternating long and short lines. The dial, while it still has a decent amount going on, still appears to be fairly minimal. I love how technical it looks. These watches retail for a mere $132, so surely shortcuts were taken. No? Shockingly, these pieces actually have sapphire crystals and Miyota quartz movements in them. Typically at this price point you get mineral glass and, quote, quartz movement in the specs. So these watches could have been brilliant. So what's the problem? They have a 42mm case size. These are all dial Bauhaus style dress watches. They're already going to wear large. If they were 36mm, they would look like 40mm watches. I cannot imagine how large these watches look in the flesh. I would imagine they are the dress equivalent of those Monstro Invicta watches that are still being sold in malls. It's just crazy. I have no idea why they went with a 42mm case on a Bauhaus dress watch. And that dial is brilliant, but you had to ruin it with the date window. But congratulations, Tapferkeit, you almost nailed it. Almost. This brand does have some other lines that are just as intriguing as the Lowenherz black watches. They actually sell some automatic watches, so right there this brand has distinguished itself from the infinite other cheap quartz watchmakers with ads out there. And honestly, I don't know anything about this brand. I may be bashing a super respected Bauhaus brand for all I know, but the Freiheit automatic watches are pretty cool looking. And they are a more reasonable 40mm. The handsets on these are very much like those in the Max Bill. The markers share some of the brilliant characteristics of the Lowenherz Blacks markers, minutes and seconds called out on the outside ends of the markers, and the hours called out on the inside end. These have a date window at the 6 o'clock, and these retail for about $265. It's great that they are automatic watches, but they're dress watches. So they're probably going to be lightweight with thinner cases than, say, dive watches. So Miyota movements, which have unidirectional rotors in them, are a very poor choice for movements in these. I've owned a dress watch with the Miyota movement in it, and because the watch is so light, the rotor is super loud. You can hear it right through the case, and you can really feel it shaking on your wrist. But they do have box crystals and exhibition case backs. As for the specifications on the Lowenherz Black, the case size is 42mm, the case material is 316L stainless steel, the case height is 7.9mm, the lug width is 20mm, it has 50 meters of water resistance, the crystal on it is a domed sapphire crystal. At least it's domed and not flat. That'll help mitigate the size a little bit. The movement inside these watches is a Miyota 2115. So there you have it, a whole bunch of different watch ads that I've clicked so that you don't have to. Some of these watches are actually pretty intriguing, and if they had gone a little bit further, believed in their designs a little bit more, even though that means they might be a bit more expensive, these could have been brilliant watches. Thanks for watching.